Zdravím vás ze studia. Tady Linda.
Tady Maruška, ahoj.
Tady Terka, ahoj.
V našem rádiu Fenomén oslavujeme 50. vysílání. Přinášíme vám rozhovor o kanadských rezidenčních školách pro původní obyvatele. Povídám o nich kanaďan Tinoy Anthony James. Celý rozhovor bude v angličtině, ale co nejdřív po jeho zveřejnění na Spotify vám jej sem pod video vložíme přeložený. Tak a teď přejdeme do angličtiny. Hello dear listeners, enjoy the interview.
Hello, Tinoy. We are happy to have you here with us today.
Good. It's working. Yes. It's good to be here. For the second time. Yes. Second time's the charm. Let's hope it works.
I have a question for you. Can you explain to us the concept of Canadian residential schools for Indigenous people?
They began in the 19th century. One of the mottos for one of the schools was to kill the Indian and save the child. Lots of bad things in the world have been about like good intentions at the beginning, but it was to kind of integrate us into like European Canadian society, as we weren't really, we kind of had our own kind of way of life, right? And I guess a lot of people in the government at that time didn't see it as sustainable for the future. That's kind of like the kind of veil that they put up. That was kind of, that was the idea. So what they did was take children forcibly from their parents and put them in a school all year round. And it was terrible.
And when and how were they established?
So they began, the first one was in 1831. It says, right, the system expanded in the 1880s. The last one closed in 1996. But it started off, I believe, it was just a couple of churches, but eventually the federal government got involved. And as soon as the federal government was involved, and it was funded by the Canadian government, conditions generally got worse.
For what purpose were these schools built?
Kill the Indian, save the child. So the purpose was to civilize us, right? Make us more Christianized. And kind of like, I guess, integrate us into society. But this led to like having to forcibly abandon our language, our culture, our way of life, and ultimately our identities.
And were these schools mandatory from the start?
I think there were a few schools that weren't, but as soon as they became like funded by the federal government, it was forcibly. There are stories because like my tribe, we lived on the river. We are the people of the river. And there are stories of like the RCMP, which is like the federal police force, coming in on boats with guns mounted to them, and they would just come collect the children, right? And then they would take them downriver. So there was kind of no way from getting away from it. Also, like each reserve also had like an Indian agent at that time, which was like a police officer. So they pretty much knew who had children most of the time.
So it was impossible to hide someone.
There are a few stories of people who didn't attend residential school, where they would go hide in the woods or the bushes for like a couple of days, and they would just live off the land, because they knew how to survive. So that did happen a few times, but like not very often.
And who ran the residential schools, and what role did the Canadian government and the church play in their operation?
So they were mainly run by Catholic, Anglican, and the Methodist churches. And the Canadian government funding and start reinforcing the attendance. But the churches played a huge role in it.
What were the living conditions like for the children in these schools?
So this is a very interesting topic. It's not interesting. It was terrible. The food was terrible. A lot of it at the time it was rotten, stale. Children lived in close quarters together. If children were sick, they didn't kind of like separate them. Other children, there was a lot of disease rampant in these schools. And for instance, I think the mortality rate, it was 1 in 25 students died in these schools. 1 out of every 25 students. For reference, in normal schools, only 1 in every 200 students would die during this time period. So, yeah.
And what was their typical daily routine?
They didn't really have very much of an education. It was just kind of like to work lower end jobs, a lot of church, not very much education. So kind of get up, religious instruction, manual labor, and yeah, they basically wanted to prepare us for like low status jobs, right, to enter the workforce.
And what did their education look like?
From what I know, it was like very, very minimal, but there was a lot of religious indoctrination, and you see that a lot where they would just kind of they're able to quote the Bible, or they would have to, right?
Was it possible for children to meet with their parents sometimes?
No, that they wouldn't. But there were stories of like families where they would canoe upriver and then like set up kind of like camp near the school, so they at least they couldn't go see their kids, but just the idea of being close to their children. So there are stories like that. I believe there were some stories of children being promised to be able to see their to their parents, but it was just kind of like a kind of bait, kind of take the lure, right? If you behave good, you might be able to see your parents.
What impact did the residential schools have on Indigenous culture and language?
My language, Hoklamalam, almost went extinct. It's had a revival in the last few years. I don't know any of my language. I know Peepahom. That's one word of my language. I think it means frog. Maybe it means deer. But it's had a revival. Our culture was... No, this is the sad part. It had a huge impact. It's amazing that our culture survived, and our way of life, and like our songs, right? We do a lot of drumming and a lot of songs. Our history and our beliefs, they've survived. And our language has survived enough. But it has a big social kind of societal effect on society as a whole. So it's culture, language, it's had its revival, but it almost died out.
And are there documented cases of physical and psychological abuse in these schools?
Physical, psychological, and other types of abuse. You can use your kind of idea of what that means. Especially psychological too. Physical, sexual abuse happened a lot. When there was a Truth and Reconciliation kind of lawsuit going on, we heard a lot of stories from individuals who had been abused. And the stories are just like horrific, absolutely horrific. There are even stories of like kids being woken up, children disappearing, children getting hit so hard they didn't move anymore, and they just didn't show up at school anymore. They were gone, they just disappeared. Some children were like, they woken up at night to go dig a hole in certain places. That's another topic about like the unmarked graves that were found. And like, yeah, no, so there's a lot of stories, and they all seem to coincide with the same thing: physical abuse, sexual abuse. Yeah. So when you take like a whole society and a whole group of people and you traumatize them, right, over and over and over again, and then you release them into a world or a society that doesn't really like them in the first place, Like, oh, here you go. You're gonna have a great life, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And did it happen only between kids and adults, or also between kids, the abuse?
So sometimes what we see is that abuse becomes like a learned behavior, especially like when this is the only thing that these children knew, that they saw this as like, I guess, normal or just so. It did happen where sometimes, right, in some cases, which happened to my mother, actually, that where another child will sexually abuse one of the younger children. It did happen once in a while.
Was bullying present in the schools?
Yeah, I definitely think there would be, especially when children or that type of environment, especially when they're bullied by the priests, the nuns, the workers there, when they're looked at as less than. I think the whole system was a form of bullying. You're not allowed to speak your language, right? You'd be punished for speaking your language. You couldn't talk to your siblings or your cousins. You'd be punished for that. Tons of things, and especially like learning a new language, right? And they want to reinforce language learning with abuse, right? So I guess bullying might have been present, probably.
And did students ever try to rebel?
There is one story, I can't remember, St. Anne's, I think the church was. They did have it where a girl at the school, she was one of the cooks there, and she got tired of like making the food for the teachers. And this is the way she described it. They ate like kings, right? They ate really good food. Well, the children ate rotten, disgusting food. And so she went outside, grabbed this box of like Spam or whatever it was, threw it on the wall. It turned into a riot at the school. And some of the kids from the story grabbed a fire hose in the school and sprayed down some of the teachers. Yeah, no, it sounds fun. But and then the police had to come and tell them to calm down.
Yeah.
From what we know about that story, and this was like later years, I think this was like in the 80s, right? This happened. Conditions got better at the school after that. The food got better, but this kind of stuff wouldn't happen in the earlier days of the school.
Hello, so this was the interview, and I think that now it's a great time to play some music. We will play you Stolo Strong from Ines. I hope I read it right. If it's wrong, I'm really sorry for mispronouncing it, but here you go and enjoy the song.
To the sky and I give my thanks. Tell my leader it's gotta be done. Don't forget where I came from. Praying G and the great big C. It got me choose the things that I wanna be, but I may keep my heart, cause being native's the key. All the star peeps who can jam to this song, asking who am I, where am I, where have we gone? Listen up everyone, cause it won't be long. We'll be coming up, Stolo strong, Stolo strong. Yeah, 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 yeah. Stolo strong. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sitting in class, going insane. Teachers working on my brain drain. My spirit's high from praying every day, but I'm working hard, feeling no shame, cause I know one day I'll be homebound soon to get back the strength you have given to me, and I'll be the person I was meant to be. All the star peeps who can jam to this song, asking who am day for the love and smiles that you share with me. Cause your hearts are pure and your spirits are light. Bring our lives to a brand new height. Only look forward, don't give up the fight. You're worth more than gold and your futures are bright. So say okay and sing along and say, I'm a stall of peeps who can jam to this song. Asking, who am I? Where am I? Where have we gone? Listen up, everyone, cause it won't be long. We'll be coming up, stall of strong. I'm a stall of peeps who can jam to this song. Asking, where am I? Where have we gone? Listen up, everyone, cause it won't be long. We'll be coming up, stall of strong. Stall of strong. Yeah, 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 yeah. Stall of strong. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
Hello, welcome back to an interview. We hope you enjoyed the song. Here is Maruška.
Here is Linda, hi.
Here is Terka, hi. And I wanted to apologize. We found out that in the interview before the song, there is some part where we are, where it is possible to hear us talking here in studio. We are really sorry for this. This was just some bad technique. I don't know if it's really said
Technical
like-
issue.
Yeah, technical issue. So we are really sorry for that. We will make another version of it, and we will play it here at YouTube and on Spotify. It will be in the good version without us talking in the background. So we are really sorry.
And now we can continue in the pre-recorded interview.
What was the attitude of indigenous people toward these schools at the time they operated? And were there any attempts to resist or change the system?
There's really no choice to resist it. You didn't have a choice. I'm pretty sure at the beginning it seemed like a good idea for some, but then, the rampant abuse that happened, the stories that you heard, when people didn't want to have their children go there and they were told that they have to go there. Today, it's disgusting. The things that happened in these like state-run and funded schools. And if you think about it, right? I hear a lot of people talk about this, and they're like, well, deaths people back in those days, kids died at school. And we look at the numbers 1 and 2 out of 200, not 1 out of 25. Right? These schools were dirty. They were filthy. They had funding. They were funded by the government. They should have been clean. Sick children shouldn't have been around other sick children. Disease shouldn't be rampant. I'm ranting. I'm ranting. It's just one of the major things is lots of these children who disappeared, their parents weren't informed, right? And some people talk about, because it's still kind of like a controversial thing in Canadian society. Some people like to think and say oh, it wasn't that bad, right? There's still a lot of racism towards Indigenous people. And it happens in every society. The last one closed in 1996. This wasn't that long ago. I was born in 1991. My mother went through this. My uncles, my aunties, my entire community went through this. It's just, I don't know. I went on a rant. And yeah, there's no resisting it. You can't resist it.
In what age kids came back to their homes? And if you have an idea, how could it look like when they came back?
So I think 18 years old. I think 18, maybe 17. I think they went back for summer sometimes, and then they were sent back. I don't know exactly, but one of the things though is that like you come back and you don't fit in with your culture anymore, right? Your reserve or the village that you're from at the time, they are still trying to kind of live traditionally, at least the older people. And you come back, you don't know your own language anymore. You don't know the way of life that indigenous people had. And then you try to fit into modern society, all right, or the kind of Christian Canadian culture. And generally, they don't accept you, right? You're kind of like lost between two worlds, but you're kind of like stuck in the middle. You're just kind of neutral. You don't know what to do, right? And when you're in that space, I think especially if you've been traumatized, right? You don't know where to go. And sometimes that can lead to some things that are very dark.
What was the long-term impact of these schools on individuals, families, and indigenous communities?
So there's kind of like two sides to it, right? Some people like became very motivated and tried to save our culture, right? I don't want to use like the word like someone's strong or something because like there's my mother was very, very traumatized. And when I was in foster care, and she would like not come up for birthdays, not show up for like Christmas, or we'd go on visits where like I'm supposed to go see my mom for an hour or two, and then we'd be there and she'd be like very, very intoxicated. And me being a kid at this time is like, why is she doing this to me? Why doesn't she care about me? So when people talk about what they say intergenerational trauma, how trauma gets passed down from like the parents, they pass it on, right? I always say that like residential schools took from me like the mother that I could have had. She wasn't a bad person. She was a very, very broken person who had like a very, very rough life, and I can't imagine going through what she went through. But I was a kid. I was angry. I remember being like 7 years old. I lived up on this foster home in the middle of nowhere in Ryder Lake. And it's my birthday. My mom's supposed to be coming. And I had like some anger issues as a child. So my foster parents got me this like blow up punching bag that you punch it and it would go down and it would come back up. I was just like sitting there hitting it, waiting and waiting and waiting for my mom to show up. And then she just doesn't show. We get a call that she's not going to come. She sounds intoxicated. And we see this with like a lot of families, right? Sometimes some of the abuse that they suffered, some of like what they deemed as lesser consequences, they would do to children, right? And then when you become like an adult, it's like, oh, didn't this happen to you when you were a kid? If you did that? No, Tinoy. People don't do that if you're bad. Well, when you swore, didn't someone grab a... Yeah. So the trauma does get passed down. A lot of indigenous communities, it's very... there's a lot of addiction. There's a lot of alcoholism. And society likes to like judge indigenous people. They're drunks. They're how would you turn out? The credit's not given enough due to the people who like what we call walk the red road. no alcohol or anything in their system like that, right? There's not enough credit for those who like remembered our languages, remembered our culture and our way of life, and not just like they safeguarded it, that they protected it, but then they shared it, right? I think it has like, and it's yeah. So there are some long-term effects, especially with like me, my family. There are some long-term effects in society, and I think that if you did that to any group of people, right, they're gonna come out of it a little messed up, right? They're gonna have a little bit some screws loose, as you would say.
And I wanted to ask if you have any siblings and if you were able to meet all of them.
We have a very, very, very big family. So I have 5 siblings. That's 5 siblings. I don't know them all very well. Me and one of my siblings were not really on good terms, so we don't talk. My other siblings, I'm lucky. I had like some bad homes in the beginning, and then one day, one guy who worked at one of the group homes that I was at, he took me in as his own and took care of me. And I grew up from that point, I grew up in like an upper middle class kind of neighborhood. And so I learned and saw things. I would see people go to work every day. I would see people have jobs, houses, right? So, but in the same way, it's like I was stuck between 2 worlds, right? I eventually didn't really identify with my own people, right? Because like I wasn't like them. So like to this day, it's like, yeah, I know how to canoe, right? Since I was a kid, I was in a canoe. I know some things. I don't know how to drum. I don't own a drum. I know minimal of my language. So I don't know too much about my culture, which is really sad. It was just something that was kind of taken from me. But in a way, I am lucky. I did grow up in some decent homes until that home got closed down. So my brothers and my sisters, they had it a lot worse than I did, I think, in many ways. And I had some better circumstances than them. So, yeah.
So this was another part of our interview, and I think it's a great time to listen to some music. So here is Last Night by Morgana Valena. So enjoy it.
Last night we let the liquor talk. I can't remember everything we said, but we said it all. You told me that you wish I was somebody you never met. But baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. I kissed your lips, make you grip the sheets with your fingertips. Last bottle of Jack, we split a fifth. Just talking about life, going sip for sip. Yeah, you know you love to fight, and I say shit I don't mean, but I'm still gonna wake up wanting you and me. I know that last night we let the liquor talk. I can't remember everything we said, but we said it all. You told me that you wish I was somebody you never met. But baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. No way it was our last night. No way it was the last night that we break up. I see your taillights in the dust. You call your mama, I call your bluff. In the middle of the night, pull her right back up. Yeah, my friends say let her go. Your friends say what the hell, I wouldn't trade your kind of love for nothing else. Oh baby, last night we let the liquor talk. I can't remember everything we said, but we said it all. You told me that you wish I was somebody you never met. But baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. We said we'd had enough. I can't remember everything we said, but we said too much. I know know you packed your shit and slammed the door right before you left. But baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. No way it was our last night. I know you said this time you really weren't coming back again. But baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. No way it was our last night.
Hello, welcome back to an interview. Here is Terka.
Here is Linda. Hi.
Here is Marushka. Hi.
And we are playing you a pre-recorded interview with Tinoy Anthony James, who is talking with us about Canadian residential schools for Indigenous people. And I will play another part of an interview and enjoy it.
And when were the residential schools officially closed, and what led to their closure?
I don't exactly know what exactly led to their closure. I think there's a lot of politics behind it, but it was 1996 that the last one closed. I would like to think that we had played a part in it, but I really I don't know. I think times just kind of changed. I would assume that the government was like, "Hey, guys, we should stop doing this. This isn't cool. This isn't nice. Let's stop." I would like to assume that.
And what does today's acknowledgement of residential schools as a part of Canadian history mean for Indigenous people?
It means that we're believed, finally. And I teach English, right? And I always like when times where it's like I have to teach a topic, right? And the topic may be Canada, right? And I'm able to like share things about Indigenous cultures and stuff because like most people are like, "Oh, Canada, you guys are so nice. You guys like hockey and live in igloos and stuff." And then what happened, right? Really? I thought they were like really no, right? So like being kind of like this acknowledged, it matters a lot. But I've said this before, it's a double-edged sword. People think this is like a political thing, right? I'm sorry, like if you're left or right wing or you like identify in that kind of political spectrum, right? If you think that this is like some left wing versus right wing thing, that there's really no hope for you at all, because like there is no case where it is okay to take children forcibly from their homes, from their parents, from their culture, from their language, their way of life, and be like, "Hey, we're just trying to make you more we're trying to civilize you." There's no justifying that, right? I know there's like controversy between like the unmarked graves that were found, what appear to be graveyards across residential schools, and what appears to be the bones of small children. There's a lot of like controversy behind that, but there's no denying that children died at these schools, number one. And number two, children's parents should have been informed. Number three, the body should have gone back to the family at all times. So it means a lot that people acknowledge it, but there is like a very loud, I would say a small portion of society that are very loud and vocal about how it's propaganda, right? And it's like they're out to get the church. Like, and sometimes like political kind of commentators get involved in it, and it's back to like back in the old days when it was like, "Oh, they're just Indian lies," right? "Oh, they're just lying. Indians lie." No, it's kind of, I don't know, but I think generally I think that most people are good. I think generally most people didn't know what was going on. I think like in your society, if you saw this happening to a minority group and you're like, oh, okay, it's just a nice school, and then you heard what was really happening, I think you guys did have, you guys did have a situation like that. But then, oh my God, that's terrible. I can't believe that happened. My second grade teacher came a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, and she was telling me, because she was alive when they were around, she's like, we had no idea that this stuff was happening. We just thought these were these schools for Indigenous children. They didn't know that children were being stolen from their homes. They didn't know it was forced. They didn't know that they weren't allowed to use their language. They didn't know about the abuse. They didn't know any of these things. And people like to see it as a dark part of history and Canadian history, and it needs to be talked about, right? And these victims need to be acknowledged. And I'm glad that like a lot of victims of these schools did get a financial kind of like they sued the government. Oh, you guys got money from the government for this. Yeah, if a government harms a group of people, they should be able to sue the government, sue the church, right? And at least get some financial compensation.
How is modern Canadian society and government trying to address the past and promote reconciliation with Indigenous peoples?
So we have a lot of like different kind of like funding that you can kind of apply for, right? People can apply for different fundings, different reserves can apply for different fundings to help, right? To help revive our culture. And I think that's owed to us, really is. You banned our culture, right? The government banned our culture, banned our language. I think that the least that is good that they're trying to revive the language, that they're working with Indigenous people. Indigenous history and culture is taught in schools now. It's like a totally different world from where I grew up, where I didn't learn much. I grew up outside of my culture, right? And I didn't learn much about my language. I remember I was working in Canada, and this like boy comes up to me. A boy, he was 18, 17 maybe, and we're working together. And he's like, "You're native, aren't you?" Like, yes, I'm native. Oh, that's really cool. And I'm not used to this because, like, the way I grew up, like, ew, you're an Indian, right? Get away from me, right? It's like we'd play cowboys and Indians, and I wanted to be the cowboy. And they're like, no, you're an Indian. And it would consist of a bunch of little kids chasing me around the playground, pretending to shoot me. And I'm like, I got you with my arrow. No, I shot your arrow. You lose. Right? It was terrible. But, like, you know, this kid was like really fascinated by like Indigenous culture, and he was like, "Do you know Huckle Malum?" Right? And this like 17-year-old, I don't like the word white people, right? But this I say Euro Canadians, right? This Euro Canadian boy, right, is teaching me words from my own language, right? And I'm like, right? It's interesting. I think the younger generation really has a different approach generally. Yeah, no, reconciliation does matter. It's like kind of meeting halfway and kind of acknowledging, right? Because we had been lied to, we'd had treaties broken, promises before, right? And they were never honored, right? So I think it's important. We had like something called Orange Shirt Day. It's another important thing. We'll get into that. I actually have a question about that.
What are the most significant initiatives and projects aimed at supporting the recovery of Indigenous cultures and language after this era?
I think school curriculum is a big thing. Teaching children more about Indigenous people, not just some background subject. I think that the lawsuit is very good. I think there are programs for like Indigenous people where they can kind of apply for a grant, something. Anybody can apply for certain grants, right? But there are certain grants that they can apply for to start a business or something, right? Um, but one of the big things is Orange Shirt Day is another big thing that happens. The last day of September is, I believe it's the last day, but is Orange Shirt Day. And this is a day across schools where they have like an orange shirt and it says every child matters on the shirt. And it's about like it started because of this girl she remembered this time. She had this orange shirt, and when she went there, she was really happy with this new orange shirt she got, and they took it from her, and they gave her like different clothes, a haircut, as lots of our hair is very very sacred. Haircut, clothes taken, and in some cases, many cases, your name taken, Christianized names. That's why my last name is James. Sometimes people were just given a number. But this, I don't know how it started, but it just kind of caught wind. And last day of September, people wear orange shirts to show support for Indigenous people who suffered from residential schools.
How can we?
Now it's perfect time to play some song. So here is a song named Crazy by Gnars Barkley. So enjoy it.
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space. And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly. And I hope that you are having the time of your life. But think twice. That's my only advice. Come on now, who do you think you are? Bless your soul. You really think you're in control? Well, I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. Just like me. My heroes had the heart to lose their lives. I wanna live. And all I remember is thinking, I wanna be like them. Ever since I was little, it looked like fun. If there's no coincidence, I've come. And I can die when I'm done. But maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you're crazy. Maybe we're crazy.
Hello, we are back after a song. Here's Linda.
Here is Marushka. Here is Terka.
And we are playing a pre-recorded interview with Tinoy Anthony James, who is talking about residential school system for Indigenous people. And we will play you the last part.
How can we, as individuals, support the process of healing and reconciliation for Indigenous peoples in relation to the history of residential schools in Canada?
I think generally, like, European society in view, you guys have like a very, very different view of you guys say Indians. You guys say Indian. I remember when I was little, I used to annoy my mom, right? This is one of the few good memories that I have, right? And I'd be like, she'd be like, don't call yourself an Indian. You're not from India, right? You're not an Indian. You're not from India. Like, Mom. I'd be like 10 maybe, right? Mom, I'm a don't, Tinoy, stop it. Indiana Jones fan. I really like the movie Indiana Jones. It's great. I'm an Indiana Jones fan. So you guys say Indian, right? So some people might get offended by it. I'm not one of those people who get offended by very much. Like, you guys have costumes of Indians. It's kind of like it's not really well in Canada, or in, like, you're like, oh, we're not a costume. Me, I think that's cool, right? I'm just one of those. I like go to, like, because I have small kids, right? I like to go to like Harakov and Oreo Hotel and the animations. Like a couple months ago, there was like they had Indian Day. Right? And there were these like little kids with little headbands and little feathers, and they were running around, going up to me like, "Oh!" I'm like, "Oh, okay," being insulted by a bunch of children. But I think that your society has like a different view of Indigenous people. Like, I don't experience racism out here at all. I don't think so. But in Canada, I have. But you just kind of get used to it. I think that just kind of learning about it, that supports causes about it. If you really want to support it, wear an orange shirt, right? Kind of be aware. But I don't think that checks. I know some people can get like kind of like offended about it, like, I didn't do anything to you guys, right? We didn't do anything in Czech Republic to the Indians. I know. I know, right? Yeah. But my thing has always been, and I say this a lot, people who know me will hear this, is just be nice, be kind to like everybody, even if you don't like the person, right? Especially if you don't like the person, just be kind to them. Be nice. I think that makes a big difference because, like, I didn't know what my mother went through, right? The way my mother was, I was so angry at her all the time. Like, we didn't even talk. Like, when she died, we weren't on speaking terms. I was so focused on me and what she did to me and how I felt, instead of like, I heard people like, she had a rough life. She went to residential school. It sounds like an excuse, right? It sounds like when she died, I hadn't talked to her like in years. I think the last time I had talked to her before that was she showed up at my Auntie Patsy's funeral, very, very intoxicated, and sat beside me. And I was embarrassed. We got into an argument, and I was a teenager, 13. And we got into a fight, and we never talked after that. I didn't know what she went through. I didn't understand it. I was young. I wasn't very empathetic. And I just saw her like as a mean, bad person sometimes. And I think that if we look at everybody who can be mean or who's kind of a bit of a prick, right? If we kind of like, instead of looking at them as like, I can't believe they were like that to me, if we look at them and go, so, what's wrong, bro? Like, if we actually like, who actually hurt you? Because I know that's like a meme kind of thing, but it's true. Who hurt you? Why are you like this? If we can just be kind to everybody, small acts of kindness, I think that's how you support. Because you don't know what everyone is going through, right? Yeah, I think that be kind, be nice to everybody is the best way to do it.
That's a beautiful message too. On the end of our interview, would you like to add something or?
No, it was nice talking with you guys for the second time. I get kind of choked up talking about this. I'm glad I was kind of like able to hold myself together. It's a very, very touchy and sensitive subject. It's very, very personal for me. I don't like talking about it very much, but it's an obligation. You have to talk about it, and in some ways, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, hello, this was our whole interview with Tinoy Anthony James, and we were talking about Canadian residential schools for Indigenous people. And now we will switch back to Czech. So, anyone who is listening and he speaks only English, we are sorry, but we will talk in Czech now. Takže zpátky do češtiny. A já tedy věřím, že ještě ten rozhovor byl pro vás nějakým způsobem přínosný, že jste se naučil něco nového nebo něco o historii. Právě i jak sám Tinoy říkal, tak vlastně my tady máme úplně jiný pohled na tyhle ty věci a podle mě ani někteří z vás samotní nemusí vědět, co se všechno dělo. Tak je jedině dobře, že jsme vám to přinesli, podle mě to téma. No a teď už se tedy podíváme na to, jaké akce jsou v okolí a vlastně, když se na to tak podíváte, tak jich je ohromné množství. Hnedka teďka 9.11. se koná tradiční pochod za kozlouchem, bude v Tišicích a proběhne tam soutěž o nejkrásnější světýlko. Pořádá ho Tišické klubko a začíná v 5 hodin. Takže pokud chcete ještě na nějaký halloweenský průvod, tak se rozhodně nezapomeňte podívat tam. Potom vám ještě chci říct, že od 11. listopadu do 31. listopadu v Neratoveckém společenském domě probíhá výstava, která se jmenuje Tajemný český advent a Vánoce. A celkově jde o představení nejrůznějších tradic. A věřím, že byste si to užili, kdybyste se tam i jenom podívali, nemusíte být hnedka na zahájení, které teda bude v pondělí od 6 hodin, ale můžete se i podívat kdykoliv na krásnou výstavu, která se tam nachází. A potom vám tedy chci říct, že 16.11. proběhne v prostorách DDM 7. turnaj mládeže v klasických šipkách od 3 hodin. Linda už tady podporuje. Jo, budu tam. Takže pokud jste vidět Lindu, tak rozhodně přijďte tam. A startovné je 50 korun a přihlášky najdete na webu DDM Neratovice. Potom ještě od 15. do 16.11. se koná akce Neratovický papír 2024 s mezinárodní účastí. A jde vlastně o přehlídku soutěžních a výstavních modelů, a která proběhne v pátek od 21 hodin a výstava pro veřejnost proběhne v sobotu od 9 do 14 hodin. Takže se rozhodně nezapomeňte podívat. Potom 17. listopadu od 6 hodin večer ve společenském domě proběhne velká akce, a to předávání ceny města Neratovice. Rozhodně se tam potkáte s několika lidmi, místa je třeba se zarezervovat, ale nemusí se za účast nějak platit. Ten stejný den je i předvánoční vyrábění z keramiky v DDM a víc zjistíte tedy u nás na webu. A 19.11. bude v domu kněžny Emmy od 2 hodin do 3 beseda o myslivosti, který téma jsme tady teda měli v pár předcházejících vysílání. Teď si tedy nejsem jistá konkrétním číslem, Maruška mi to rychle najde, že jo?
Bylo to přesně 46. vysílání.
Takže v našem 46. vysílání jsme vyspovídali Zuzanu Slavíkovou, která nám o myslivosti něco pověděla. Takže kdybyste se když tak nemohli dostavit právě na tuto besedu, tak si můžete poslechnout i naše vysílání, anebo se ho můžete poslechnout a můžete jít na besedu už připraveni. A potom 21. listopadu je přednáška Jak s náma manipulují média od 6 hodin v Městské knihovně Neratovice. A 23.11. se ve velkém sálu společenského domu koná 9. ročník fotbalového plesu. Je to obrovitánská akce, vstupný je 450 korun, koná se od 8 hodin večer a hlavní hvězdou večera bude kapitán Demo. Rozhodně všichni znáte Zlatíčka. Takže Linda už tady normálně kouká, určitě přijdeš, co? Jo. No. Už zvažuje normálně účast, takže pokud máte rádi kapitána Dema, rozhodně neváhejte přijít. A tedy ještě vám řeknu poslední 2 akce. 29. listopadu je vánoční prodejní výstava od 9 hodin do 4 hodin tady v Domě dětí a mládeže a 30.11. se od 3 hodin koná v Kovrním divadelku Lípa zatraceně.
Loutkové divadlo.
Přesně tak, loutkové divadlo, Mikuláš s nadílkou a více informací zjistíte na webu Společenského domu. No a to byly veškeré akce za týden, teda za poslední následující měsíc. Já už se v tom normálně pletu, ty,
Já
to
myslím,
náročný
prostě
to mluvení.
těch akcí je tolik, že už si jako seš zmatená, ale
Přesně
chápu to.
tak, ale teda je tolik akcí, takže rozhodně neváhejte, poslechněte si je klidně znova, aby se ujistili v termínech a rozhodně nějakou navštívte, je to krásný, je to nabitý a je to takový hezký si užít takhle předvánoční atmosféru.
No a teď já už si teda vezmu slovo. Tak jelikož je tohle vlastně naše 50. vysílání, tak já bych ráda tak nějak shrnula, co se za těch 50 vysílání odehrálo. Určitě bych ráda zmínila naše nějaké významné hosty, mezi který například patří kulturpreventista, se kterými jsme mimochodem i měli akci Bezpečně na prázdniny, nějak takhle se to jmenovalo. Celá akce byla úplně úžasná. I celkově ten sbor kulturpreventista jsou úžasný a podporují nás, takže za to jsme jim neskutečně vděční. Dále také třeba hosté jako Jan Onder a Natálie Otáhalová. Poté jsme tady měli také spisovatelku Petru Braunovou a taky přeživší Osvětimi a Terezína Evelínu Mérovou. Také jsme tady měli tanečnici Kateřinu Bartunek-Hrstkovou, kterou můžete znát ze Stardance.
A právě i teďka soutěží ve Stardance, takže pokud jí fandíte, tak si poslechněte toto vysílání a rozhodně jí posílejte hlasy.
Měli jsme tady také vysílání o Siru Nikolasi Vintnovi, o který nám povídal Zdeněk Tulis. A kromě hostů tady máme taky různý tematický vysílání jako Halloween, Vánoce, různé svátky a potom každá z nás má vlastně nějakou taky epizodu o nás, o redaktorkách. Na to, že to je naše 50. vysílání, tak si myslím, že ta doba utekla hrozně rychle. Nepřipadá mi to vůbec jako 50. vysílání. A teda moc doufám, že v tom budeme pokračovat. A taky děkujeme vám, posluchačům, za veškerou podporu, za aktivitu a za to, že tady s náma jste a doufám, že budete i pokračovat.
A já bych ještě ráda hodně poděkovala Nikče, která tady vlastně s náma začínala.
Ano, přesně tak.
A později se k nám potom připojila Maruška, protože Nikča toho měla spolu s maturitou hodně. Ale celkově se možná ještě nadále objeví v nějakých našich vysíláních nebo minimálně rozhovorech, které nebudou probíhat ve středu, protože má hodně školy. Si určitě umíte představit na vysoké, jaké to je. A tedy chceme poděkovat Nikče, že to vlastně s náma zvládala, že nám stále nějak pomáhá, jakkoliv může.
Ano.
A rozhodně budeme rádi, pokud se tady nějak ukáže a věřím, že i vy posluchači budete.
Ano.
Tak a nyní se můžeme podívat na významné dny v tomto týdnu. Tak dnes ve středu je Mezinárodní den prevence ničení životního prostředí v průběhu válek a ozbrojených konfliktů. 10. listopadu je Světový den vědy pro mír a rozvoj. A 11. listopadu, krom toho, že přijede Martin na bílém koni, doufejme, tak je i Mezinárodní den válečných veteránů a Mezinárodní den prasklých těsnění. Takže bacha na těsnění. Zajímavé svátky to tady byly, no?
No a já bych teda ještě vlastně dodala, že tohle je naše 50. vysílání, ale určitě jich bude ještě minimálně těch dalších 50, takže bych řekla, že jsme minimálně v půlce.
A rozhodně bych řekla, že to bude třeba 10% z toho, co vůbec celkově uděláme, takže přesně jak říkala Linda, moc vám děkujeme za veškerou podporu do teďka. Sledujte naše sociální sítě. Lindo, řekneš nám, řekneš jim, kde nás můžou najít?
Určitě. Tak jsme na Instagramu, kde jsme jako Rádio Fenomén, na Facebooku také jako Rádio Fenomén a poslechnout si nás můžete na YouTube a i na Spotify. Na Spotify umišťujeme zkrácená vysílání, nejsou zde písničky, takže pokud budete mít méně času, určitě si nás poslechněte tam.
Tak a tady naše vysílání je už teďka u konce, takže nám nezbývá nic, než vám znova poděkovat. To je takový děkovací vysílání, bych řekla hodně. A doufám, že se vám tady i dnešní rozhovor líbil v angličtině. Jak jsme tady říkali na začátku, tak co nejdřív budeme moc, tak vám ho zveřejníme tady přímo na YouTube pod videem přeložený. Bude to určitě i v komentářích, protože se nám to všechno nevejde do popisku, ale komentáře budou připnuté a rozhodně poznáte, že jsou od nás. Tak tedy děkujeme moc za podporu a slyšíme se za týden.
Mějte se fenomenálně.
Fenomenálně.